Good evening, I'm Tammy Suleiman. You're watching the panel. Tonight, we focus on foreclosures in Cayman. Now, we have the latest data, and it shows that banks cashed in on more than 100 foreclosure sales in 2016. So exactly what picture does this paint? Well, that depends on who you talk to. Realtors say these sales are actually a reflection of a backlog of foreclosed properties and only now starting to move. Off the back of that, government says raw data from the banks indicate the numbers are coming down. But there are others who say the numbers are still too high and point to a community that is struggling to make ends meet. Well, former Department of Commerce and Investment head Jonathan Piercy, who has announced he will toss his hat in the election ring, is here tonight, and we'll hear exactly in which electoral district that hat will be tossed. Reach me via email at news@cayman27.ky. Stay with us. We'll begin the discussion on the panel after this. Welcome back to the panel. We are here with Jonathan Piercy, who has decided to throw his hat in the ring once again. Good evening, Mr. Piercy.
Good evening, Tommy.
Now, we're going to talk about a number of issues tonight, primarily foreclosures in Cayman.
Sure.
But you have announced that you're going to run.
Yeah,
I'm wondering where.
I announced back in October, actually, I was going to run, but I didn't at that time announce where I would run. So tonight I came on a program to let individuals know that I will be running in Georgetown West. That is where I intend to contest for a seat.
And I think you have campaign material and everything ready. You're going to roll up your sleeves. We know that Elio Solomon, your former UDP colleague, is also running in Georgetown West.
Right. Well, let me just say before I speak a little bit about Elio Solomon, I just want to say that speaking about my stuff, persons can go to my webpage, jonathanpiercy.org. I have a Facebook page, Jonathan Piercy GT. They can send me an email as well at info@jonathanpiercy.org, or they can give me a call, 926-1663.
All right.
So I wanted to put that out there. Yes, it is my understanding that Elio Solomon is running in Georgetown West, and I wish him all the best.
And we expect that this is going to be a tight race, not just in your electoral district that you've just declared in, but across the board, uncharted territory for the country. You've ran in several elections before. Unsuccessful to this point. What do you expect in this race? Do you think that the tides will turn for you?
It's going to be an interesting election, that I will say. We don't have any sort of empirical data to show whether or not the tides will change or not, but what I would encourage persons to do, especially this time because you only have one vote, is to pay very, very careful attention to what candidates are saying and ask yourself whether or not what they're saying makes absolute sense, whether or not we need a change in government, perhaps. Do you think that we have gone forward and not backward, for example? And do you think that some of the proposals that we're putting out there, and who the persons are putting them out there, are they trustworthy? Are they reliable? Are they dependable? Do they have a track record that is proven? While I haven't been successful, I have been consistent, Tommy. From 2009 right up until present, I have been consistent. There have been things that I've said that were controversial even with my party. But I believe that there comes a time when we have to say things that are right, not things that are convenient or things that might be necessarily politically correct, but things that are right. And for a very, 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 very long time, I can tell you that the people of Cayman have been struggling for a lot of reasons. And I just believe that, I have been in the struggle. When people have come to me, Tommy, and asked me for assistance or asked me for help or asked me for advice and whatnot, I have never said to them, my hands are tied. I've always said, my hands have tried.
Now, you are running under the banner of CDP, the Cayman Democratic Party, formerly known as United Democratic Party. We've spoken with the leader of your party, McKeever Bush, and he says he's fielding at least 9. He's hoping to have a slate of 12. Do you think that the party is going to have a good showing at the polls? And as I said earlier, uncharted territory. I mean, we don't know how this is going to shake up for the country. First time we have single-member constituencies. Well,
I think at the end of the day, the party will always have a good showing at the polls. The Constitution encourages party politics. The election results since 2009, actually since 2005, to present show that the parties are here to stay, and many persons are persuaded and encouraged to know that we have organized politics, and we need organized politics, Tommy. So I do believe that the parties will have a good showing. I also believe that the pain is real. I believe that people are really feeling pain. We are going to speak a little bit about home foreclosures, but there are other things that are affecting people. People are going to the hospital and can't get the necessary insurance. There are elderly out there that can't find food. Cayman Islands can't find work, and the list goes on. And that's real. That's not a figment of anyone's imagination. You know, I've asked a number of people, you know, do you know anyone that's struggling? Do you know anyone that's hurting? Do you know anyone that their lives have improved over the last 4 years? And there are a few people that say, yeah, I know someone that's doing quite well. But 9 times out of 10, you're getting, boy, it's hard for everyone. So I do believe that there's going to be a good showing at the polls. I do believe that persons need to pay attention and understand that independent candidates are very appealing, because when we go through stresses in life and struggles in life, we like to abandon logic and we like to hold on to emotion. That's how we are. And emotionally, the independent candidate looks good, but on paper, if we got 18 or 19 representatives, or the majority of them were independent candidates, what would their priorities be? How would they sort out some of these issues? Do they have a proven track record? Do they have a proven record for leadership? You know, we know that, for example, the independents that are in the House right now haven't really accomplished anything as a collective, because they can't even agree to stand together, right? We have had issues where, for example, the elected members from Northside and East End, they've decided they're not going to participate as part of the opposition because they're independent. Okay, so we have to ask ourselves, these persons have been sitting here for a very long time as independent candidates, which is very attractive, very appealing, and it's very fascinating to watch. But how effective has their leadership been?
Well, there are those who said maybe it's time to change the system that we have, the Westminster system, to allow independents to have more say in the House.
Well, we can't change the Westminster system because we are a part of the UK, and that is the system, right? But there is no perfect system. And what we need to do more than anything else is, as voters, we need to remember that the persons that get elected every time is based 100% on the decision that the voter makes.
All right, with that, we're going to take a pause. We'll be back and we'll be talking foreclosures when we return. Welcome back to the panel. We're going to talk about foreclosures now. And Mr. Pierce, we had talked about it earlier in the news, but you're finding it concerning the data that we're seeing. We have the information from the Cayman Islands Real Estate and Brokers Association, which shows that over the last 5-6 years, foreclosure sales went up steadily. It dipped ever so slightly last year by about 4. They take a look at it, that bar graph. You can see 2011, 2012, we're talking about 30-something or so sales. And as we get higher through the years, so too do the sales. And you're concerned?
I have to be concerned. Home ownership is a key indicator for the state of any economy. That is why in the 2008-2009 home foreclosure crisis in the United States of America, the federal government actually intervened because they started to see that the home market, the home ownership market was actually pear-shaped. It was turning pear-shaped. It's actually something, as I say, I mean, when someone's ability to own their own property and hold on to that piece of property is a key indicator as to how the family is doing and how the income is doing in that family. So when you start to see figures, for example, in 2011, 30, 2012, 33, so no significant change there. 2013, 55. Now let's pause for a little bit. In 2011, 2012, the combined was only 63. In 2013, it was almost equal that, it's 55. And then in 2014, it's 72. There's 116, okay, in 2015 and 112 in 2016. That's a total of 418 homes. Now, I will agree to the extent that many of these properties that are sold may have been on the market for a long time.
That's what I was going to bring up. That's what the Real Estate Association
I agree with
saying.
that. I'm not having
they're only now moving.
I'm not having any complaint with that. What concerns me is that there's even more coming onto the market. And although the statistics will show that
but government denies that. Government says less are coming onto the market.
Government has said a lot of things. Let me say what's happening, and I can tell you this, okay? There are persons who are calling me daily, who are in the midst of going to the courts. The banks are taking them there because they are behind 90 days, 120 days, 150 days, 300 odd days, okay? Many of these individuals are there simply because at one point in time, they either lost their job or one of the breadwinners through divorce or separation, whatnot, is no longer there. So the burden has increased for them. These individuals have reached out to the bank. As a matter of fact, they don't need to reach out to the bank. The bank is actively reaching out to them. They constantly call them, they constantly ask them
because
what's
they
going on.
want to know what's happening with the money.
Right. And then they explain to them what's going on. The bank say, okay, we'll work with you. But the bank isn't working with them. What the bank is doing is, let me tell you what the bank is doing. The bank is charging a late fee. And then the bank is also charging interest on that late fee. Does that sound like working with you? At 90 days, the bank then says, we're going to proceed with foreclosure proceedings. At that point in time, all communication is cut off by the bank. If the client decides to or wants to reach out to the bank is saying, oh, we can't assist you, it's now with the courts. If the client has a job and can now afford to make the payment, they're still saying to the client, we can't help you, it's before the courts. Okay? And if perchance the bank decides that they're going to work with them, the interest that have been accumulated and the late fees that have been accumulated makes it almost impossible. And so the bank isn't even trying to reset these mortgages. They're not trying to refinance. They're not trying to lower the interest rate or come up with a new way. They're not trying to do that. And so I am simply saying that if our government is not prepared to put money at this program to help people, they should at least come up with a policy. It is not good enough for our government to say, we recognize that people are losing their homes and it's a concern to us, but it's not the policy of the government to pay and help people, and it's also doesn't appear to be the government's policy or the government's position to put a policy in place. We cannot allow people to lose their homes and you empathize with them when you have the capacity to correct the problem.
Now, what about those who say, and I've heard this from government as well, you have to look at downsizing at times. If you know you're running into financial difficulties, it's going on for a month, 2 months, so on and so forth, time to downsize. What do you say to that?
How do you downsize in a mortgage payment? How do you downsize? And listen, I can tell you, let me give you an example. Someone had a rental property. It was in the bank, obviously, mortgage, whatnot. The person got rid, well, the tenants left, and the person wrote the bank and said to them, the place, we can't get it rented. So instead of giving you the $1,200 a month, we'll give you $900 a month. And as soon as we get the place rented, we'll go back and start. The bank didn't respond. The next thing that happened was the bank said to them, you're behind X amount of days. This is how much the late fees compounded with the interest is. This is what we need. And the bank actually sent a valuator out and started to value the property. That's how they knew what was going on. Does that sound like help to you? This is what's happening in Cayman. There's another lady, a senior citizen, who had apartments. Okay, that was her main income. And something happened, and one of her kids needed some assistance, and she put her property in the bank as collateral for the kid, for her child to get the financing that was necessary. Things didn't work out the way it was supposed to be worked out. She went to the bank and said, what can I do? Work with me. What can I do to pay something in order to keep my place and pay down on this? The bank said that they would get back to her. The next thing she knew, the bank took her property, and she didn't even know that she didn't own the property anymore. She went to collect the rent, and one of her tenants showed her a letter and said, you don't own this anymore. Does that sound like help to you? You see, these are just numbers, Tommy. These are just statistics. But I am telling you that behind every single number, behind every single statistic, there is a story. And it's a painful story. It's a real story. And what I am trying to do is bring awareness to the story. And hopefully, if I'm elected come May, I can start to make a difference.
You know what, speaking of stories, we're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to hear a story of one woman who's actually going through what you just described. Stay with us. Welcome back to the panel. The latest numbers from the Economic and Statistics Office shows foreclosures are on the decline ever so slightly. But for those facing foreclosure, finding solace in the data can be difficult, if not impossible. Cayman 27's Joe Avery sat down with one woman who has vowed to fight. She says something needs to be done to help families like hers.
It's like you're in this little boat all alone. And I mean, you're left with one paddle. What must you do?
Homeowner and mother of 3, Darsha Hamilton, describes the struggle to keep her home.
When my daughter took ill is when I fell off the ladder.
She says she was making payments and in good standing on her mortgage until her autistic daughter Lachey's medical problems required off-island treatment.
No, I'm not looking for handouts. I'm looking for some sort of an assistance. I've reached out to other banks. They don't. Once you're in foreclosure, they're not willing to help. They don't help.
Now, Ms. Hamilton admits she's missed some mortgage payments, including her payment for December. She says she's in arrears to the tune of around $60,000.
The banks are not reaching out to anyone to help. I think they're just basically out for selling the home for the value and for the interest. I think the government needs to step in.
Ms. Hamilton envisions a government program that would help those in her situation with a low-interest loan to cover the arrears. From 2011 to 2013, government Save the Mortgage program tried something similar, distributing $2.5 million to help homeowners who had fallen behind on their mortgages. 82% defaulted on their bank loans.
You have genuine people that are out there that are willing to pay their mortgage, but there's no help for them.
She says she's not giving up without a fight.
And if I have to bat the doors up from the inside and don't let anyone in, I'm going to do that because I have equity in my home. I want to owe the bank so much, and I'm not going to make them take it for just the little that I owe them.
Joe Avery, Cayman 27.
We reached out to the Bankers Association and they declined to participate in this story, but we were referred to Section 14 of the Banking Code, and I turn to my guest now, Mr. Percy, Jonathan Percy. This is Section 14 of the Banking Code, and basically it just says, you know, financial difficulties, how can we help? And basically you contact your bank and it goes through, you know, finding a solution. It's different for every banker, alternative repayment options. It talks about, you know, interest-only repayments on the loan, temporarily reducing the interest rate for a specified period of time, so on and so forth. This was the response that we got from the Bankers Association for those who might be facing foreclosure or if they're running into difficulty. Is this enough?
Yeah, that's enough. That's actually perfect. The fact is that they're not following this. This is a good start. But if you heard the young lady in the program, what she's saying is that she had a problem. Her daughter had a problem. And so she ran into a life event. And because of that, she had a problem paying. I'm sure, and she said in the program, she's gone to the bank. She's spoken with the bank. She didn't say anything about this stuff happening. She didn't say that the bank was prepared to reduce interest rates or look at principal or discuss the matter.
Well, she didn't say it in that story, but to be honest with you, I can't say that that may not have been discussed with her. I can't say that.
No, but what I can say, okay, let me tell you something, right? The reason that I'm not empathetic with this and I'm sympathetic with this is because I'm going through this exact same problem. Okay? Yeah, I'm going through this exact same problem. I didn't have a problem paying my mortgage until up to about early 2014. It's not in foreclosure, thank the Lord, because I've been able to do odds and ends and make ends meet as best as I can. But it is not current. It is under the 90 days, but it's where it's not in a good spot. Okay? And when I spoke with the bank, so now I'm going to speak personally. When I spoke with the bank constantly calls me, and the minute you make a payment, I'll tell them, they'll say to me, Mr. Percy, your mortgage is behind 54 days. I say, okay, I'm going to make a payment on Friday. I make one payment. They call me the Monday, when can we expect another payment? I said, well, you know, I explain the situation. I don't have a steady job. My income is sporadic. As soon as I get it, I give it to you. I'm trying to keep it under the 90-day threshold. I've spoken to them and told them, you know, I have years of experience in banking and financial services. I understand how it works. I've been very understanding, and I've been very appreciative of them doing their job to the extent that they are doing their job. But what I find that is happening is that they simply don't understand. The reason they don't understand, first of all, is because they're not even calling from the Cayman Islands. They're calling from Trinidad, the bank that I'm dealing with. So they don't have a clue. Not that they need to, but they don't have any appreciation for what's happening. So when you hear politicians say, for example, that I empathize, yes, they empathize, because empathy is a feeling that you have, is an emotion that you have about something that someone is going through that you've never experienced. I am saying to you that I sympathize because I'm going through the exact same problem with you. Now, what have I done? I have reached out to the bank. The bank told me at one point in time, Mr. Percy, if you pay the entire, I think it was $5,000 something, and you're back to, everything is up and current, we will call you in, we will have a meeting with you, we will talk about principal payment only or interest payment only. I made the payment, I got some funds, I made the payment, my mortgage became current. I sent them an email, advised them it was done, they checked their records, it was done. The lady from Trinidad sent an email to the Cayman office. To this day, Tommy, They have not reached out to me and called me to this very day, to this second. Okay? They said to me the last time they spoke to me, they said, this call is going to be recorded for quality assurance. I said, I hope to God it is. Okay? Because the pain is real. And when you say to me that the best you can do in terms of helping me is to call me and remind me of the payment that I need to make, that's not really help. The federal government in the United States of America, they have two programs, HAMP and HARP. It's a federal program. One is specific. HAMP is specific to persons who are in danger of default. HARP are for those that are under water. Both of these programs force the banks, held the banks accountable to work with the homeowner so that they could save their home. We don't have a policy like that here. What Minister Ponton and Minister Archer has said is that they have spoken with the Bankers Association. They have spoken with the banks to encourage them to try to work.
They haven't wielded a heavier hand.
And I don't even want to say wield a heavy hand, but we have SEMA, right? And SEMA is there for a reason. SEMA is there, not to say that SEMA can deal with this, but what I'm trying to say is that financial services are in the business. They're in the business of making money. They're not in the business of regulating themselves. So that's why we have to have laws and policy and legislation to regulate these entities, right?
But isn't that what the Monetary Authority?
Yeah, but I'm not saying. But I'm not saying. Right, but what I'm not saying is that SEMA is responsible for this. What I'm saying is that a minister should understand that financial services is not good at regulating itself, or they wouldn't be SEMA. Hence the reason I say they're SEMA. SEMA is there to regulate because business isn't good at regulating itself. So if we understand that financial services isn't the best at regulating itself, therefore we have to come up with standards and codes and laws and best practice and the whole nine, then why don't we take the same approach with this? We have to take the same approach with this. We can have a conversation and they can put this out, but who's verifying that it's being done? Right? So when SEMA does, for example, on-site and off-site inspections, we want to see a larger sample of the foreclosure file. We want to see where you have recorded these complaints, and we want to see what is going on. And then government needs to put a policy in place, like HAMP, like HARP, to simply say, if this person, because of a life event, loss of job, sickness, death, whatnot, the bank must go through all of these steps and do what they can do.
All right, we're going to pause there because I have quite a number of follow-up questions. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the panel. We're talking about foreclosures, and my guest tonight, Jonathan Piercy, revealed that he too knows the pain. Your house wasn't foreclosed on, but you have been in talks with the banks because you were behind on your payments.
Correct.
And I think what you're driving at is that when the banks say they're going to work with you.
Yep.
It's not a call from another island saying you need to pay. It's not the harassment calls. It's a more personal interaction.
Yep.
How can I help you get back on top of your payments?
Yeah, well, I've never gotten that call. As I said to you before the break, I was promised that if I made my mortgage current, they would work with me, and I fulfilled my end of the bargain. I sent them an email. I haven't heard anything back from the person here locally. I can tell you another thing that's happening as well is when persons come into the bank here to try to explain their situation here, they then say, well, we can't make the decision. The decision is made somewhere else, Bahamas or Barbados or Trinidad or wherever head office is. So again, there's that distance being placed. So when, for example, you hear the government talking about, they put a program in place back in 2015 to give people advice in terms of how to speak and how to present their argument or their case to the bank, I can assure you that with the best argument, they would simply say, my hands are tied. I can't do it. I can't make that decision. I'm not the person to make that decision. I can tell you that just recently I was speaking to a real estate agent who told me that he went to show a place that was in foreclosure, and when he got there, no one was home, but he could see that there were young kids there because there was toys scattered. There was a playpen there. There was some baby bottles in this thing, and he said he simply couldn't do it because he's saying, listen, if I sell this person's home, where are these kids going to go? There's another individual that I spoke with that says that, he's finding it difficult because many of the homes that they're going to, the parents can't afford daycare sometimes, so they're keeping the kids at home. The grandparents.
These are foreclosure homes you're talking about?
These are foreclosure homes. The grandparents are there trying to be with the kids during the day to cut the cost of daycare, and they're there and they're opening the door, showing the place, these young kids and grandparents in the home. Some of these people, I'm telling you, listen, you have persons that have had a mortgage for 18 years, 17 years, made their payments on time. 2-3 years ago, they started to have difficulty. Some of these individuals, because of underemployment, job loss, life issues, life problems. For 18 years, 16, 17, 18 years, they've made the payments on time. They have equity in excess of the outstanding mortgage, and they have less than $25,000 or even sometimes $35,000 left to pay on the mortgage. And the bank is taking their place, you know.
It's interesting because we spoke with Beulah McField, who runs Meals on Wheels, the program, and she was saying that the community that she serves, which is the elderly, the indigent, those who can't leave home, they take their meals to them. They're the ones she's finding are being hit by foreclosures. She's seen a number of elderly people unable to, they haven't finished making their payments so that their house is rightly theirs, and foreclosures are happening.
Let me ask you something, Tammy. If the policy is that government is not in the business of assisting Caymanians in making their mortgage payments to the extent of at least bringing it up to current, how can then government be in the business of paying Caymanians rent after they lose their homes? If you lose your home, Tommy, and you have nowhere to go, and we've seen the stories, you've covered some of those stories with Matthew Leslie out in the community helping people and whatnot. If you're not prepared to help people save their mortgage or save their home by assisting with the mortgage, how can it be okay then for you to pay the rent? These people will be renting for the rest of their lives. Let me tell you something. If you're 45, 48, 49 years old and you lose your place, it's going to take you through foreclosure, it's going to take you 5 to 7 years to get your credit to the point where you can even apply for another mortgage. At that time, you're going to be closer to 60, 54 to 55, 52 to 55. The law is now changed from 60 to 65, so let's just use 65. Which bank is going to amortize a mortgage for the next 10 years, and which employee that is making less than $4,000 a month can make a payment that is required to satisfy a $250,000 or $200,000 home amortized for 10 years? They simply can't do it. If you take $200,000 and you amortize that for 10 years with a 6.5% interest,
they're not going to go for it.
You can't, right. Your debt to service ratio is way beyond the 40%. So if you lose your home at 4 to 7 years of age because of foreclosure, you have lost your opportunity to ever own another home again. Now, who takes care of those individuals when they reach the age of retirement? So let's say, for example, you lose your home, but you still have a job. So you can find a place and you can rent and you go on with life. But you're renting for the next 15 years, okay? And then when you retire, 15 to 17 years, you retire. Who then takes care of you? But if you had your place, if you could, if the government would have done something to help you save your home, when you retired, you would have had your home paid for, and they wouldn't have to worry about finding a place for you. Tell me which one makes sense.
Well, we'll leave that for the viewer who can mull it over during this break. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the panel. So we're talking about foreclosures with my guest, Jonathan Percy. And the government is saying that they believe that the foreclosure sale numbers will fall back to pre-recession levels. They're saying that the economy is growing at 3%, unemployment is down to 5.6%, the financial perspective has improved, and that should translate to reductions in foreclosures.
What say I?
And what say you?
I say that, this is what I say. When you have bad loans, which foreclosures are bad loans, and you package them and you resell them, in essence, the bank has hit the reset button. So, of course, it's just a matter of time before they look at their book of bad loans, repackage them, put them on the market, sell them. Of course, those numbers will go down. But here's the problem I have. This is the problem I have. This is Minister Panton, right? Speaking about this stuff. Is he a bank economist? Is he representing the bank?
Well, he's financial services minister,
yeah, but
so he has responsibility for the banks.
No, but his number one responsibility and how he got there, people voted him there. So beyond being a spokesperson or a bank economist and analyst for the bank, this is what the bank analyst should say. What Mr. Panton should be saying is, we recognize that there is a problem, which he stated that. And what we're going to do is we're going to ensure that the banks work with these persons to ensure that they can keep their homes so that the bank can get their money and the people that put me here can keep their homes. That's what representatives do. There is a balance. And let me say this as well. How that is done. There's another word for representative. It's legislator. That means that their responsibility is to pass law, make legislation, ensure that policy and stuff is going to be in the best interest of the people. Why do we have a government, Tommy? Why do we have a government? We have a government because government is there to do what collectively, is there to do collectively what society can't do individually. That's why we have elections every 4 years. We have elections every 4 years so that democracy can determine who the people see fit to put in office.
The government of the day would say, though, that they have done just exactly what you said. Talked to the banks, met with people
legislation,
going through issues to try and help them keep their homes.
Tommy, I said legislation and I said policy. And there is not one piece of legislation and not one piece of policy. And let me pause here to say that in 2015, there was a private member's motion, I believe it was brought by Mr. Ezra Miller, talking about this exact same issue.
Yes.
And I paid very close attention to the remarks. And I heard the leader of the opposition, McKeever Bush, stand up there and give a good debate. And he even made suggestions. He made suggestions and he said, listen, we could put a program in place similar to the federal program. We need to put legislation in place to guarantee. All I've ever heard, whenever Mr. Bush speaks about this, is that, oh, the Save the Mortgage program was a failure because 80% of the people that got the money, they still ended up losing their homes. Okay. Doesn't that mean, though, that 20% of the people that got that still have their homes? So are we saying that the ideal is the enemy of the good? And if we look at the 80%, and this is not political spin, this is real. If you look at the 80% that ended up still losing their homes, was it because they still couldn't find a job? Was it because they still had a medical crisis that they couldn't get any help for? Was it because of some other issue, a divorce or separation? The bank needs to work with people. The bank goes through all sorts of stuff to try to make sure that you're at that threshold, that 40% debt to ratio threshold and whatnot. But things happen. And that's why it's such a conservative figure. The problem is that if one life event happens, it throws that from 40% to 60 to 70%, and then it becomes a problem for you to pay your mortgage.
Okay, but at some point, I mean, what is it that you want banks to say? We won't do any foreclosures ever?
No. What I want the banks to say is not just say, I want the banks to follow this. This is what the banks say that they would do. They said, if it appears to us from the operation of your account that you may be in financial difficulties, our first step will be to contact you to discuss the matter. They don't do that. They call you to ask you when you can make a payment. And if you say to them, I'm unemployed, they say to you then, when can we expect a payment? I'll tell you what they say to me. They say, is there anyone that you could borrow the money from? I said, well, that wouldn't really make much sense because now I would owe them. You see what I'm saying? What I'm saying to you is all they want is their pound of flesh. So that 14.3 doesn't happen. Okay?
This is the section in the Bankers Code where it talks about financial difficulties. How can we help?
Another thing that it asks for is, it says, find a solution. Each borrower's situation is unique, but generally in determining the solution, the best fits your circumstances, the following will be considered. Your personal circumstances. They ask you about it. In my case, they asked me, it wasn't considered. Your overall indebtedness, they asked me about it. They didn't consider it. The information, financial or otherwise, that you provide, the current repayment capacity, your previous repayment history, none of that was included. As a matter of fact, this last one, E, your previous repayment history, let's talk about that for a little bit. So I told them, I said...
Actually, we're going to have to take a pause. We can't talk about that
after
when we come back. We'll be back. The clock is ticking. I want to turn to my guest, Jonathan Pace. We're talking about foreclosures and the expectations from the banks. And we were just talking about previous repayment history that the the banks talk about in finding a solution.
Yeah,
They will look at that.
they say that each borrower's situation is unique, so they'll look at different factors. And one of the factors that they list is your previous repayment history. So I was just explaining to you that, you know, I had that experience, right? I had my mortgage, I was paying it for years, didn't miss a payment, everything was good. Didn't ever get a call from the bank saying, thank you so much for making your payment on time. Never got that call. But when I got the call to say that, you know, it was in arrears by a number of days, I said to them, well, look at my previous repayment history. You know, you'll see that I've always made the payments on time. Is there anything that you can do? She says, well, no, not really. Not at this time. When can we expect the payment? It's almost like you're talking to a robot. You're talking to someone that is void of emotion. And again, I'm saying it's not their fault. They're doing a job. But Tommy, let me say something to you. If you have a mortgage, and most banks will, depending on how old you are or how young you are, most banks will amortize you will give you a 25-year mortgage, okay? Amortize for 25 years. If you meet those payments and you pay that off exactly in 25 years, you have paid for your home 3.5 times. So, if someone has a mortgage for 20 years, you've paid for it about 2.75 times, depending on what it is in interest rates, but around that. So if someone has made 17 years worth of payments on a 20-year mortgage and it has a problem, the bank has already made their money. I'm not saying to you that they're to write it off. What I'm saying to you is they should look at the circumstances and they should definitely be working with the clients. They're not doing those things. And that is what bothers me. When I hear, for example, the minister say that, this is Minister Panton some time back stating that, you know, he's not quite sure if the banks are making their money. Is unconvinced by the group. He was talking about this group that was meeting to talk about home foreclosures. And he was saying he wasn't convinced by the group's argument that banks were actually making money on the sale of foreclosed homes and businesses. He doesn't have to be concerned with that. What he needs to be concerned about is that his people, our people, have been placed out of their homes. And that's a real concern. And he doesn't have to question it. Here's some statistics here. And so you need to stop being, yes, you're the Minister for Financial Services, but there's a balance. We can't have, and I keep saying this to you, Tommy, whenever I come on, and thank you for having me. I keep saying that we constantly look at the financial balance sheet, and that's important. But we also need to look at the social balance sheet. And we're not looking at the social balance sheet. We have something here, right? Today, Cayman News Service was actually, today. The poor lose out in the budget cash shuffle.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple of weeks ago where Cabinet made some appropriations.
Taking 2.5 million.
Mr. Miller had brought it to our attention.
They've taken 2.5 million from various welfare cash allocations, and they're putting it towards 500,000. They're taking 500,000 from school lunch and uniform programs, 375 from poor relief, 800,000 from housing, and 850 from benefits for veterans and servicemen. We're losing on every front. We're losing. The reason that the banks are doing this is because this is what our government does. Our government, unfortunately, really is all about the financial balance sheet. How much money we can make, how much surplus we have, what we can do to increase the spending. But at what cost, Tommy? At what cost? We are prepared to cut spending on education programs, but every single year we raise money for prison. That's why my platform is all about making laws work in a holistic fashion, Tommy. I want laws that make sense and actually work together. Not a balloon effect where you squeeze one side and a bubble comes out on another side, right? If we want to deal with crime, we have to deal with employment. If we want to deal with jobs, we have to deal with education.
Yeah, nothing operates in a silo. Everything impacts the other.
But these things
that is a lofty desire, though, to say, all right, I need all the laws to be working in conjunction with each other. That should be happening. But
that's what we have to work towards.
Let's say you are successful in making it to the House. That is a tall order. How do you expect to achieve such an order to make sure that all the laws across the board are talking to each other?
No, I can't do that. Let me say that right now. That's an ideal position. But that is why I have to set such a lofty goal, so that whenever I become complacent, whenever I feel that I shouldn't push and struggle, I should always remember what the promise was. I can never be perfect. but I must always work towards perfection. I can't solve all the problems, but together, you and I can start to resolve many of them. What is happening is that currently the leadership that we have, they are disconnected from the people that they're there to represent. Yes, they represent business. I'm pro-business. I was director of the Department of Commerce and Investment. I understand how foreign direct investment impacts small business, creates jobs, expand and diversify the economy. I want those things. Those things are good. I can't say that I'm pro-Caymanian and not pro-business, but there must be a balance. We need to bring everyone together. We need to bring every single person who is willing, able, and available, Tommy. We need to bring them together to share in our economic success.
Let me ask you though, before you go further, because I want to bring it back to the decision to run in Georgetown West. Why did you choose that electoral district? Do you feel that it is a representation of what it is that you want to fix, in a sense? Do you think that the issues within that electoral district speak to the problems that you think need to be addressed?
Two main reasons, and for full disclosure, let me just say that Georgetown West was always one of the, once we obviously came up with the boundaries and whatnot, it was always an area that I was very keen about, and I have a great amount of love and affinity for it. So two main reasons. The first reason is I grew up there. I actually grew up on a road off of Smith Road called Pond Road, fourth house on the left. I grew up there. I was there till I was about 20-something years old, my early 20s, right? I went to school. I went to True for Youth School. That's in that constituency. I remember as a little child walking home from True for Youth School, stopping along the way to Willie Bodden department store and picking up Skittles and soda and stuff with a good friend of mine who I'm sure wouldn't mind me calling his name, Hansel Rankin, who's now a chef. So that's my roots. I also, as a child and as a teenager, went to the Seventh-day Adventist Church right there on Smith Road. So my navel string was buried there, and I grew up there. All of my formative years were there. Another reason is because it is a good demographic. You know why it's a good demographic? It's a working middle class. It's a blue-collar, middle income to upper middle income bracket. The majority of people are in that, and they are suffering. They are suffering. Anyone in this country that is middle class is hurting. And I believe, I truly, truly believe that I can address some of these issues in a holistic way, in a balanced way.
I have to ask you though, what do you mean by a good demographic?
It's a good demographic because it has a good mix of youth. It also has a good mix of elderly people. It also has a strong middle class, a working middle class. There are persons in there that are very independent. There are persons in there who are not looking for a handout, but they definitely need some help, right? There's a good number of persons in there as well that are holding down good jobs that went to university and college and stuff, and they're paying attention. You see what I'm saying? So it's a very good demographic. It's a sort of demographic that if we're not careful with, we could lose. It's also a demographic that you could look at and say, if they're hurting, it's a good indication that the economy isn't doing so well.
And we constantly hear that the middle class is evaporating. Do you think that that electoral district is indicative of that?
There's a struggle there. As I said to you at the beginning of the program, home foreclosure is a key indicator. And I can tell you that there are a number of persons in there that are struggling to keep their homes, and there are a number of properties that have been sold as a result of foreclosure. There's also a problem with unemployment in that area and also underemployment. There's also an issue with crime. I remember when I grew up on Pond Road, for example, we didn't hear of burglaries and break-ins. There was one about maybe a little over a year ago in the broad daylight. Someone burglarized the place, the person came home and found the person in their home, called the police, and the person was thankfully was arrested. Mm-hmm. Right. But so those are the issues that are affecting that area, and they're affecting that area because, as I said before, I find that the economy is struggling and people are having difficulty, and so crime seeps in. Persons that can't find work, they start to lose their homes, they're having difficulty finding food for themselves if they're elderly or taking care of their meds and whatnot. I want to deal with those issues because I truly care. I truly care. I've walked this path.
Well, we're down to the last few seconds. What is it that you want people to remember? We've been talking mainly about foreclosures tonight. What is it that you want to leave people with?
I want to ask people to think carefully about over the last 4 years and just simply ask themselves, are we better off today than we were 4 years ago? And if that answer is no, then the follow-up question has to be why. When I look at things, for example, like unemployment, development of our youth, home foreclosures we spoke about, the list goes on. I can tell you, you can close your eyes and point in any direction and there's probably something wrong. What has gone wrong? I am saying to people that, listen, if you give me an opportunity, the people especially in Georgetown West, if I get that opportunity to run in Georgetown West, I am saying to them, forward, in service, together. We will move forward, in service, together. I'm not leaving anyone behind. Can I be the panacea? Absolutely not. But what I can guarantee is that anything that I say and I'm going to commit to, I am going to work my darn hardest to ensure that it is done.
Mr. Pacey, thank you for being here with us on the panel. Certainly appreciate it, particularly as it pertains to foreclosures, a situation that some in our community are grappling with. So thank you very much for being here with us. And to you at home, thank you for tuning into the panel. We certainly do appreciate it. Until next week, have a good night.